Ozi mezimrat Yah Vayehi Lishua Ozi mezimrat Yah Vayehi Lishua
Page 128. As we move our way through the Psalms of Shabbat, we turn forward to the words of Hariyu, which can be found on the top of page 134.
Ladonai kol haaretz, Ladonai kol haaretz, Ladonai kol haaretz. Pitzchu leranenu lezameru, ranenu lezameru, ranenu lezameru. Zamru l'Adonai bechino, bechino v'kol zimra. Zamru l'Adonai bechino v'kol zimra. Yai nai 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 nai, yai nai nai nai, yai nai 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 nai, yai.
And as we move through these songs of Shabbat that are intended to allow us to let go of the week that has been and embrace the Shabbat that is before us, we find ourselves midway through page 137 with the words of the psalm that say, Adonai oz la'amo yiten, Adonai yivarech et amo v'shalom.
Adonai oz le'amo yiten, Adonai yivarech et amo. Adonai oz le'amo yiten, Adonai yivarech et amo. Shalom. Shalom. Adonai oz le'amo yiten, Adonai yevarech et amo. Adonai oz le'amo yiten, Adonai yevarech et amo. Shalom. 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 Shalom.
As we come into this space, whether it be the physical space of this sanctuary on this Shabbat Eve, or whether it be the virtual space of this congregation, wherever it is that you join us, we carry ourselves from the Psalms of Shabbat into the Ma'ariv service with the words that are inscribed on the threshold of our doorway. Words that remind us of our deepest aspirations. That the door of the synagogue be wide enough to receive all who hunger for love, all who are lonely for friendship. May it welcome all who have cares to unburden, thanks to express, and hopes to nurture. May the door of the synagogue be narrow enough to shut out pettiness and pride, envy and enmity. May its threshold be no stumbling block to young or straying feet. May it be too high to admit complacency, selfishness, and harshness. May this synagogue be, for all who enter, the doorway to a richer and more meaningful life. And on this Shabbat Eve, may it also be the doorway to a richer and more meaningful Shabbat. We turn forward to page 138, 138, and continue now with the words of L'chadodi.
Lecha dodi likrat kala pene Shabbat nekabela. Lecha dodi likrat kala pene Shabbat nekabela. Shama v'zachor b'dibur echad hishmianu. El hameyuchad Adonai echad u'shemo echad l'shemo tiferet. Ve'letila lecha dodi likrat kala pene Shabbat nekabela. Lecha dodi likrat kala pene Shabbat nekabela. Likrat Shabbat lechu v'necha ki mekor הברכה מראש מקדם, נסוכה סוף מעשה, במשאבה תחילה, לך דודי לקראת קלה, פני שבת נקבלה, לך דודי לקראת קלה, פני שבת נקבלה, התעוררי, התעוררי כברך, קומי אורי, 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 שידברי כבוד אדוני, עלייך נגלה, לך דודי לקראת קלה, פני שבת נקבלה, לך דודי לקראת קלה, פני שבת נקבלה, ימין ושמאל תפרוצי ואת אדוני תריצי על יד איש, בן פרצי ונשמחה ונגילה, לך דודי לקראת קלה, פני שבת נקבלה, לך דודי לקראת קלה, פני שבת נקבלה.
We rise and face the door to welcome Shabbat.
בואי ושלום, עטרת בעלה גם בשמחה, ובצולה תוך אמוני, עם סגולה בואי חלה, מואי חלה, לך דודי לקראת קלה, פני שבת נקבלה, לך דודי לקראת קלה, פני שבת נקבלה.
We'll remain standing for just a few more moments as we recognize that having welcomed Shabbat through song and through celebration, we're now going to continue to welcome Shabbat through ritual. And I'd like to invite you, Karen, to come up and help us kindle these Shabbat lights. And inviting you to come up and light these Shabbat candles, you also provide me with the opportunity to recognize that in our congregation this evening we have a number of the graduates of your intensive Hebrew program. And without exception, which concluded this past week, with the final session that was in person, and we give thanks for that too. But gives us the opportunity to thank you for the incredible work that you do as being a teacher within our community, and particularly as I've heard from your students in the sanctuary, for inspiring such a love of Jewish learning. It is a wonderful thing, and we're so grateful for the way in which you do it, and couldn't think of a better person to welcome us into Shabbat.
As these candles give light to all who behold them, so may we by our lives give light to all who behold us. As their brightness reminds us of the generations of Israel who have kindled light, so may we in our own day be among those who kindle light. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam asher kitshanu b'mitzvotav v'tzivanu lehadlik ner shel Shabbat.
Amen. Amen to you too, and amen to each and every one of you. Please take a moment before we see it just to turn around to those who came into shul after you to wish them Shabbat Shalom. If you see a face you don't recognize, take a moment to wish them Shabbat Shalom. Introduce yourself. It's a little hard to recognize people behind the masks, and for those of you joining us online, take a moment to reach out to those amongst us and wish them to a Shabbat Shalom. We're on page 140, 140.
מזמור שיר ליום השבת, טוב להודות לאדוני, ולזמר לשמך עליון, ולזמר לשמך עליון. מזמור שיר ליום השבת, טוב להודות לאדוני, ולזמר לשמך עליון, ולזמר לשמך עליון. להגיד בבוקר חסדך, ואמונתך בלילות, עלי עשור ועלי נבל, עלי היגיון בכינור. מזמור שיר ליום השבת, טוב להודות לאדוני, ולזמר לשמך עליון, ולזמר לשמך עליון. כי שימחתני אדוני בפועלך, במעשה ידיך הרנן. מה גדלו מעשיך אדוני, מאוד עמקו מחשבותיך. איש בהול לא ידע, וכסיל לא יבין את זאת. מזמור שיר ליום השבת, טוב להודות לאדוני, ולזמר לשמך עליון, ולזמר לשמך עליון.
The righteous bloom like a date palm, they thrive like a cedar in Lebanon. Planted in the Eternal One's house, they flourish in our God's courts. In old age, they still produce fruit. They are full of sap and freshness, attesting that our God is upright, our rock, in whom there is no wrong. On page 142, the song of Shabbat, about ministering angels coming to wish each of us peace and well-being. Shalom Aleichem.
Shalom Aleichem, Malachei Hasharet, Malachei Elyon. Mi Melech Malachei Hamlachim HaKadosh Baruch Hu. Boachem leShalom, Malachei Hashalom, Malachei Elyon. Mi Melech Malachei Hamlachim HaKadosh Baruch Hu. Baruch Hu Nile Shalom, Malachei Hashalom, Malachei Elyon. Mi Melech Malachei Hamlachim HaKadosh Baruch Hu. Tzedchem l'shalom, Malachei Hashalom, Malachei Elyon. Mi Melech Malachei Hamlachim HaKadosh Baruch Hu.
And so as we move out of the songs and psalms of Shabbat, we turn to page 144 and we rise for the Chatzi Kaddish in advance of the call to prayer.
Yitkadal ve'yitkadash meraba, amen. Me'ahoma dvarach yiruteh, ve'ahamlech malchuteh, v'chayachon u'yamechon, u'chayir chol beit Yisrael. Bagala, bagala, u'vizman karim, ve'imru, amen. Yehi shemei rabba mevorach, le'alam u'almei almaya yitbarach. Yitbarach v'yishtabach v'yitpah v'yitromam v'yitnaseh v'yithada v'yitale v'yitalal shamei d'kodesha brichu le'elam min kol berchata v'shirata tushbachata v'nechemata damiran me'alma ve'imru amen. Baruch Adonai HaMevorach Le'olam Va'ed.
As we are seated, let's turn forward a page and continue with the Ma'ariv Aravim, the evening prayer. Please join me in the Hebrew if you're able. Baruch Ata Adonai Eloheinu Melech HaOlam Asher Bidvaro Ma'ariv Aravim V'chokhmah Poteach Sha'arim Uvitvona Meshane Itim Umechalif et Hazmanim Umesader et HaKochavim Bishmerotehem Barkia Kirtzono Borei Yom V'Layla Golei Or Mipnei Choshech V'Choshech Mipnei Or Uma'avil Yom Uvein Layla Umavdil Ben Yom Uvein Layla Adonai Tzavaot Shemo El Chai V'Kayam Tamid Imloch Aleinu Le'olam Va'ed Baruch Ata Adonai HaMa'ariv Aravim.
Ahavat Olam Beit Yisrael Amcha Torah u'mitzvot, hukim u'mishpatim, otanu limadeta. Al ken Adonai Eloheinu b'shachbeinu, uv'kumeinu nasiach b'chukecha, ונשמח בדברי תורתך ובמצוותיך לעולם ועד, כי הם חיינו ואורך ימינו, ובהם נגי יומם ולילה, נגי יומם ולילה. ואהבתך תסיר ממנו לעולמים. ברוך אתה אדוני אוהב עמו ישראל, אוהב עמו ישראל. Shema Yisrael Adonai Eloheinu, Adonai, Adonai Echad. Baruch Shem Kevod, Shem Kevod, Malchuto Leolam, Leolam Va'ed. Le'ahavta et Adonai Elohecha bechol levavcha ubechol nafshecha ubechol meodecha, vehayu hadvarim ha'ele asher nochi metzavecha hayom al levavecha, veshinantam levanecha v'dibarta bam v'shivtecha b'veitecha u'v'lechtecha v'derech u'v'shachbecha u'v'kumecha, וכשאתם לאות על ידיך והיו לטוטפות בין עיניך, וכתבתם על מזוזות ביתך ובשעריך. ויאמר אדוני אל משה לאמור, דבר אל בני ישראל ואמרת עליהם, ועשו להם ציצית על כנפי ביתיהם לדורתם, ונתנו על ציצית הכנף פתיל תכלת. והיה לכם לציצית תוריתם אותו וזכרתם את כל מצוות אדוני, ועשיתם אותם, ולא תטורו אחרי לבבכם ואחרי עיניכם, אשר אתם זונים אחריהם. למען תזכרו ועשיתם את כל מצוותיי, והייתם קדושים לאלוהיכם. אני אדוני אלוהיכם, אשר הוצאתי אתכם מארץ מצרים, להיות לכם לאלוהים. אני אדוני אלוהיכם, אדוני אלוהיכם אמת.
אמת ואמונה כל זאת, וקיים עלינו, כי הוא אדוני אלוהינו, ואין זולתו, ואנחנו ישראל עמו. All this we hold to be true and trustworthy for us. You alone are our God, and we are Israel, your people. You are our sovereign and our Savior, who delivers us from oppressors' hands and saves us from tyrants' fists. You work wonders without number, marvels beyond count. You give us life and steady our foots. You perform miracles for us before Pharaoh, signs and wonders in the land of the Egyptians. You led your people Israel out from their midst to freedom for all time. When your children witnessed your dominions, they praised your name in gratitude, and they accepted your sovereignty. Moses, Miriam, and all Israel sang to you together, lifting their voices joyously, just as we do now with the words of Micha Mocha on page 158.
מי כמוך באלים אדוני, מי כמוך נהדר בקודש, נורא תהילות, עושה פלא. מלכותך ראו בניך בוקע ים לפני משה ומרים. זה לי ענו ואמרו אדוני ימלוך לעולם ועד. מי כמוך באלים אדוני, מי כמוך נהדר בקודש, נורא תהילות, עושה פלא. ונאמר כי יפדה אדוני את יעקב, וגלה מיד חזק ממנו. ברוך אתה אדוני גל ישראל.
Blessed are you, Eternal One, Redeemer of our ancestors in days gone by, and the Spirit and the force that brings redemption to us each and every day. We turn forward to page 160 and find before us the words of the Hashkivenu prayer. Those of you in the sanctuary or joining us online who have been regular participants in our daily daven would know that twice this week I paused our davening just before we arrived at this point in the service to reflect on the profound simplicity of this liturgy. How the Hashkivenu asks for something so simple, but yet so immense. The ability to lie our heads down to rest at night in peace, and the privilege to rise up the next day renewed. I'm going to speak a little later in our service about why I paused twice this week on that simple but profound prayer. But at this point, I'm simply going to challenge you to take a moment to think, what is the rest that you want this evening? And what is it that you look forward to being renewed to and recommitted when you wake tomorrow?
Ashkifeinu Adonai Eloheinu leShalom Ve'hamidenu Malkeinu leChayim. Spread the shelter of your peace over us. Guide us in wisdom, compassion, and trust. Hashkivenu Adonai, Eloheinu leShalom, Ve'hamidenu Malkeinu leChayim. Save us for the sake of your name. Shield us from hatred, sorrow, and pain. Hashkivenu Adonai, Eloheinu leShalom, Ve'hamidenu Malkeinu leChayim, leChayim, leChayim.
Baruch atah Adonai haporeh sukat shalom aleinu v'al kol amo Yisrael v'al Yerushalayim.
Amen.
Blessed you, Eternal One, who gives shelter and peace to us, to your people Israel, and through us to all humanity. Shabbos.
ושמרו בני ישראל את השבת, לעשות את השבת לדורותם ברית עולם. ושמרו בני ישראל את השבת, לעשות את השבת לדורותם ברית עולם. ביני ובין בני ישראל, אותי לעולם, אותי לעולם. ושמרו בני ישראל את השבת, לעשות את השבת לדורותם ברית עולם. כי ששת ימים עשה אדוני, עשה אדוני את השמיים ואת הארץ. ושמרו בני ישראל את השבת, לעשות את השבת לדורותם ברית עולם. וביום השביעי שבת וינפש, שבת וינפש, שבת וינפש. ושמרו בני ישראל את השבת, לעשות את השבת לדורתם ברית עולם, ושמרו בני ישראל את השבת, לעשות את השבת לדורתם ברית עולם.
And as we turn forward now to page 164, we rise for the Amidah as we carry our service forward into both our communal as well as our personal prayer, beginning as we always do with the opening 3 benedictions, and then, as is our practice on a Shabbat Eve, leaving each other in silent personal prayer. Please feel free to consider the prayers on the pages of the prayer book, or if you feel so called, the prayers on the pages of your hearts as we make our way through the Amidah together.
Adonai sefatai tiftahu fi agitei latecha. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu v'Elohei Avotenu v'Imotenu, Elohei Avraham, Elohei Yitzchak, v'Elohei Yaakov, Elohei Sarah, Elohei Rivka, Elohei Rachel, v'Elohei Leah, Ha'el Hagadol, Hagibor v'Hanora, El Elyon, גומל חסדים טובים וקונה הכל, וזוכר חסדי אבות ואימהות, ומביא גאולה לפני בניהם, למען שמו באהבה. מלך עוזר מושיע ומגן, ברוך אתה אדוני, מגן אברהם ועזרת שרה. אתה גיבור לעולם אדוני, מחיים מתים אתה רב להושיע. משיב הרוח ומוריד הגשם, מזריח השמש ומוריד הטל. מחכה חיים בחסד, מחיה מתים ברחמים רבים. סומך נופלים ורופא חולים, ומתיר אסורים, ומקיים אמונתו לשני עפר. מי כמוך בעל גבורות, ומי דומה לך? מלך ממית ומחיה ומצמיח ישוע, ונאמן אתה להחיות מתים. ברוך אתה אדוני, מחיה המתים. אתה קדוש ושמך קדוש, וקדושים בכל יום יהללוך סלה. ברוך אתה אדוני, האל הקדוש.
We continue in personal prayer to the foot of page 180.
עושה שלום במרומיו, יעשה שלום עלינו ועל כל ישראל ואמרו אמן. עושה שלום במרומיו, הוא יעשה שלום עלינו ועל כל ישראל ואמרו אמן. יעשה שלום, יעשה שלום, שלום עלינו ועל כל ישראל. יעשה שלום, יעשה שלום, שלום עלינו ועל כל ישראל. יעשה שלום, יעשה שלום, שלום עלינו ועל כל ישראל. יעשה שלום, יעשה שלום, שלום עלינו ועל כל ישראל. יעשה שלום, יעשה שלום, שלום עלינו ועל כל ישראל.
ועל כל בני Adam. So I mentioned earlier in services that there were two occasions this past week where I found myself leading the daily daven, once with Tammy, once with Sharon, and pausing before the Hashkivenu. Not just for myself, but on both occasions, in recognition of the people who sat before me, as well as an extended recognition of those who weren't sitting before me. In a congregation our size and our age, it's not unusual that we find ourselves commemorating two bereavements in a week. But it is remarkably unusual that in 1 week we say goodbye to two people who lived such extraordinarily long, meaningful, and purposeful lives. It is extraordinary, and perhaps I use that word too easily and too often, but it is truly extraordinary that in the winter of 2021, I found myself not once but twice standing on this bimah, referring to the life and legacies of individuals who were born in the summer of 1925. Judith Montag and Arik Watsky, born just a few hundred kilometers away from one another, just a few weeks apart, both born into the worst place and the worst time in history. Both proud Polish Jews. Both survivors of the worst of humanity. Through very different, very individual stories. Each of them made their way through pogroms, through Shoah, and even through Auschwitz, to make their way here across the seas to Melbourne, to build and create new lives, to start new families, to create a future which at many times through their young lives they undoubtedly felt was never going to be possible. I stood this week with half a dozen children, a dozen grandchildren, and over a dozen great-grandchildren, celebrating these remarkable lives. Different, distinct, individual, but both with a defining characteristic which had less to do with their place of their birth and the circumstances and the horrors of their childhood, but everything to do with the way in which they responded to it. Yes, victims. Yes, survivors. But more than that, each of them were true livers of life, who focused not on that which had happened to them, and for that matter, who did it, but rather on the many people who took great risk to ensure that they would make it through, and on the many people who helped form and shape their lives. And when they arrived in different paths and through different journeys to their final moments with family and friends, both of them reflected not on the tragedy of their lives, but on the extraordinary blessings that they received. As Rabbi, and I'm sure you, Rabbi Morgan, would affirm as well, we have a great privilege in hearing these stories, in learning a little of these lives, and trying to support families in making sense of them. They are our elders. They are our connection to our past, but they are also very much our inspiration for this present. And the fact was not lost on me that just this week, as our community, our congregation, farewelled two of our elders, and with them, our connection to an incredibly difficult and extraordinarily important part of our story, we have to find a way to honor them, to tell their story, to celebrate their languages, and to pass it on to those that will come after them. As many of you know, some of us spoke about just prior to services, I don't believe in accidents. And so I don't feel it is an accident that just as we say goodbye and recognize the place of our elders in our congregation this week, our country pauses through this NAIDOC week to remember, to celebrate, and to understand the extraordinary contribution of our nation's first people. As Jews, we understand and know better than many the importance of knowing the past so that it helps us understand the present and look to the future. And so often we claim this as being one of the great fundamental gifts that our tradition gave to the world. Then we look back 40,000 years before that and know that those same values were being passed on in this incredible country by our nation's first peoples. And so tonight, as I seek to linger and remember, particularly the life and legacy of two extraordinary people who again I name, Judith Montag and Arik Wartsky. I also want you to encourage you, those in the sanctuary as well as those joining us through the streaming of our services, to understand that we have a lot more to learn about our individual as well as our collective pasts. We have languages to still discover, conversations to have, pasts to appreciate, connections to understand, and futures to plan. To this extent, I want to send an invitation that extends beyond our regular congregational calendar and programming. To those of you who are able to join us here on Sunday night, here physically in this space, if you're able, or here physically through the live streaming of our services, as we host B'nai B'rith's Human Rights Oration, 7:30 on Sunday night, and we'll have the opportunity to hear from Professor Marcia Langdon, A.O., one of the great teachers of our nation's first people. Someone who understands as acutely, perhaps more acutely than we do, about the importance of recognizing the past so we can celebrate the present and plan to the future. And we honor our tradition and our elders by showing respect to those who have come before us in this land and in all lands. We sit tonight on the precipice of the month of Av, beginning the final of the 3 weeks of liminal reflection for our national identity. This is a time of national healing for us as Jews. What is it that we as a people are going to be able to do to bring ourselves together in the year that lies ahead? Again, I don't believe in accidents. And I'm not surprised that the theme of NAIDOC Week 2021 is Heal Country. Let us join together to heal country, to heal ourselves, to heal our past, and to heal our future. That is my Shabbat dream. That is my Shabbat wish. That is my Shabbat hope for each and every one of us. Let's turn to page 586 and rise for Aleinu as our service begins to draw to a close.
עלינו לשבח לאדון הכל, לתת גדולה ליוצא בראשית, שהוא נוטה שמיים ויוסד הארץ, ומשב יקרו בשמיים ממעל, ושכינתו זו בגופי מרומים, הוא אלוהינו אין עוד, ואנחנו קוראים ומשתחווים ומודים לפני מלך מלכי המלכים הקדוש ברוך הוא, ונאמר והיה אדוני למלך על כל הארץ ביום ההוא יהיה אדוני אחד ושמו אחד.
We remain standing for a few more moments as we turn our thoughts to those that are no longer with us and ready ourselves to offer the words of Kaddish Yatom, the Mourner's Kaddish on page 598. In advance of that, I should say, we think of those who have lived and whom we have lost and who we have taken into our hearts with our own. We think of our friends and our neighbors, the martyrs of our people and those whose graves are unmarked, and those of every race and nation whose lives have been a blessing to humanity. We remember them as we meditate on the meaning of love and loss, of life and death. This week we again begin our remembrances by thinking of Judith Montag and Arik Watsky, both whose Shiva we are still observing, as well as those whose Shloshim, the first 30 days of passing, we still recall. Eva Fain, Abe Gold, Tom Hyers, Sandra Korn, Jacqueline Langley, Alexandra Obanska, Jacob Steinmagen, and Reuben Weckelsman. And on this Shabbat Matot Maaseh, the Shabbat Rosh Chodesh, we also think of those whose yortzites we're remembering this day and this week. Beryl Aarons, Gilbert Barnes, Philip Bean, Anna Balin, Isidore Bentata, Lily Bernstein, Fischl Bock, Sarah Cowan, Rebecca Eilenberg, Harold Fisher, Lucy Gladwin, Clara Goldband, Stephen Gorog, Alison Hurst, Irene Hutchinson, David Joseph, Maya Josky, Herta Katz, David Komisarov, Adolf Lustig, Hilda Lustig, Elizabeth Magid, Maury Morgan, Lee Payne, Isaac Pose, Stephen Rothman, and Ray Sack, Andrew Saxon, Ruth Schlesinger, and Gerda Spitz, Irene Strouth, Judith Strafford, and Abraham Weisberg, Rosa Weisberg, and Sarah Zilberstein. If you have other names of remembrance that you'd like to add to this roll call of memorial, then I invite you to add those names as my eyes meet yours. We join together as one community to offer these words. Yitkadal v'yitkadash shomer haba, ba'amad divrach yirutei v'amlich machutei, v'chayachon v'yimachon v'cheidachol Beit Yisrael, ba'agalav v'zman kariv v'imru.
Amen.
Yehei shmei rabba mevorach le'olam amei amaya, yiparach v'yishtabah v'yipa'ah v'yitroman v'yitnaseh, v'yitadav v'yitalei v'yitalal shemei d'kodisha,
Brichu.
le'elam min kol brichata v'shirata, tushbechata v'dechemata, דמירן בעלמה ואמרו,
Amen.
יהי שלמה רבה מן שמיה, וחיים עלינו ועל כל ישראל ואמרו,
Amen.
עושה שלום במרומיו, הוא יעשה שלום עלינו ועל כל ישראל ואמרו,
Amen.
Amen. May the one who causes peace to reign in the heavens above bring peace to all of us, to all who mourn, and to that we say, Amen. As you are seated and as we wish you once more a long life for those who are amongst us mourning, I invite our president up onto the bima to offer a few announcements and greetings from our Board of Governance. Handwritten. I forgot that people know how to do that.
With my special pen. Thank you, Rabbi. Shabbat Shalom. How wonderful to be together for services physically and virtually. And how amazing to think back to BCE before COVID erupted for how far we have come as a way to connect with our community. Whilst we had the infrastructure in place and were already streaming services, it tended to be embraced by those who were unwell. And now it has become a natural part of our connection and a genuine option that is chosen by those who prefer the comfort of their home, perhaps for reasons of mobility, distance, hello parents, Shabbat Shalom, children of family, the need to cook for Shabbat dinner. I am incredibly grateful to Rabbi Lazaro and for the past boards who had the prescience to make this happen. A warm welcome to our Geirut students. I hope you have a meaningful journey, and I look forward to continue the interactions and engagements with you all. A few announcements. Please join us tomorrow for services. Joining us to give the drush will be Assistant Commissioner Lauren Calloway from Family Violence Command, Victoria Police. And then please stay for a conversation at our first lunch and learn for the year. On Sunday at 7:30 p.m, Rosh Chodesh Women's Group will meet online to explore the meaning of food in our lives as Jews. And please contact past President Rebecca Silk and she will be able to send you the link. Thank you to Ali and to Tammy and to Rabbi for a beautiful start to Shabbat. And I'll end with some good news. I am delighted to share that Cantor Loom has entered into a new contract with us and look forward to continuing to enjoy his voice and his teachings, and may our relationship grow in strength. Shabbat Shalom. Shabbat Shalom.
As we turn to Kiddush, I invite those of you in the sanctuary who would like to rise with us. If you have Kiddush at home, please feel free to stand as well. And if people at the back would be kind enough to take the glasses and pass them through the room. The lighter is grape juice, the darker is wine. Kiddush can be found in our prayer book on page 123.
Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam borei peri hagafen. Amen. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam asher kiddushanu b'mitzvotav v'ratzavanu v'shabbat kodsho b'ahava uvratzon hinchilanu zikaron lema'aseh v'reishit ki hu yom tehillah lemikra'ei kodesh zecher letziat Mitzrayim kivanu v'acharta ve'otanu kidashta mikol ha'amim v'shabbat kodshecha b'ahava uvratzon hinchaltanu baruch atah Adonai mekadesh ha-Shabbat.
Amen. L'chaim and Shabbat Shalom to you too. Scotty, we're going to need your help once you finish that wine, because before we say goodbye to all of our friends who are joining us online, I will let people know that there is a challah at the rear of the sanctuary too.
When you're done.
And we'll make motzi. Do you want to pull that out so you can get a little higher so you can be seen? Or just get lifted up. Hand on the challah.
Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam hamotzi lechem min haaretz. Amen.
Amen. Shabbat Shalom and B'tei Avon. We'll close our service as we did with song and celebration. Shabbat Shalom to you all.
הנה מה טוב ומנעים שבת אחים גם יחד. 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 How good it is, how sweet it is to be together on this day. How good it is, how sweet it is to be together on this day.